Uh, I'll start with, so I'll just explain what I'm going to cover today. Uh, I'll start with the basic concept of stability, what exactly we want to learn while we study this chapter. And I'll cover it in 10-15 minutes initially, and then I'll go to the problem solving steps, which probably will be more involved. Okay, so please follow the initial of 10-15 minutes and stop me if you have any questions. Okay, so start with definition. What is the understanding, what is your understanding on stability? The textbook definition says this: there are two conditions. One stable system always produce a bounded output for a given bounded input. Okay, and almost every working control system in the world works with a bounded signal. If signal is not bounded, you cannot control them. Okay. Second condition for a stable system is if you don't give any input, then output is supposed to come back to zero, irrespective of their initial condition. And what is zero? Zero is considered as the equilibrium condition. So quotient operating point for amplifier, uh, uh, any stable condition where it means no output is not dependent on signal. Okay, so these are the two conditions which will describe whether your system, a control system, is stable or not. And if the system is not stable, you don't expect the parameter to be controlled properly. Okay, so any question? Now I'll try to go into explaining few terminology I have used here. Bounded input and bounded output. What do you mean by bounded input and bounded output? What is a bounded signal? Just to explain that, I'll ask you a question. Okay, you may read it carefully. You are doing an experiment in chemical lab, and it is very important to maintain the temperature of the chemical solution between 50 degrees centigrade to 70 degrees centigrade. And your experiment will be successful only if the temperature is maintained between 50 degree and 70 degree. Now you are doing it with the help of an electric heater and a clinical thermometer. Okay, so these form a control loop. Now let's identify the elements of the control loop. The actuator is the electric heater. This means the actuator is the component which will impact the parameter you are trying to control. So temperature is what you are trying to control, and electric heater will help you to heat it up. If you keep the heater off, then temperature will come down to the ambient temperature, and you have to again heat it up. So this is the actuator. The feedback element in this case is a clinical thermometer. It measures the temperature. Who is the controller? Is the person involved in the experiment. In this case, you or whoever is doing the experiment. Now, these are the three basic component of a closed loop control system, right? Okay, this question is also already answered. Is it a closed loop or open loop control system? These are the classification of control systems, right? Whether closed loop or open loop. Now, another question is it a manual control system or automatic control system? Since a person is involved, human being is involved to make the decision, we will say it is a manual control system, not a automatic control system. Next question. Can this experiment be successful? So I'll ask a response from the audience. How do I see the message? Anybody
Yeah, I'll basically. I think somebody raised the hand to answer, but no, I think he.
Currently, he is not.
Okay,
Not
so I think
active.
normal. I think in the interest of time, let's quickly move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this experiment will not be successful. Okay, because I'll come to the reason later. But can this experiment be successful? The answer is no. And is it a stable control system? Again, the answer is no. Why? Because if you see the element in the feedback path, thermometer, I said it's a clinical thermometer. And the clinical thermometer can measure the temperature only within 35 to 40 degrees centigrade approximately. Okay. If the temperature is beyond more than 42 degrees centigrade, your thermometer will not be able to predict the temperature. It will saturate the upper bound of the signal. The mercury level will hit the highest point and it will not show any temperature information. That is called the bounded nature of the signal. So output is bounded between 35 and 42 on reading, and also the temperature range, which is the input parameter, that is also limited to 35 degrees centigrade to 42 degrees centigrade. This is the importance of the boundedness or of the signal range. And I think every system, every practical system has a limited works within a limited range. Any amplifier works within the supply range. Uh, any you take an example of any measurement or any control system, any element, it works only within a certain range, and that is the valid range of that system, whether it's input or output. Okay, so now we understand the bounded, the nature of a bounded signal and definition of it, and the conditions for stability of a control system. With these two, I'll move to the next few examples. Okay, let's say you have a system whose output is yt, and okay, input is given as xt, and the transfer function in S domain is gs. We can have the time domain transfer function as well, but I'm just looking into the yt. Now, if y is equal to 2x plus 3, can you conclude that whether the system, the output y is a bounded signal or not? So I think it will be a bounded signal because x by definition is a bounded signal. I'm assuming that x is always bounded. If x is bounded, y will also be bounded. Provided you have sufficient that I'm assuming that 2 it can multiply by 2 and it can accommodate the offset as well. But you can conclude that this is a bounded signal. You can say what is the value, and if it can accommodate that output range, it's a bounded signal. What about this? The second term is also, I'm assuming, the bounded signal. But what happens if you add a term which is related to t? If you see, right, even if you don't have, even if x is a constant input, t keeps growing up. As the time progresses, the output is growing. So if I draw it on the sorry, if I draw it on time scale, even if x is constant, it will keep growing, and of course the system will have some limitations, wherever this point is, and at some t is equal to infinity, definitely this signal is going to be unbound signal. It is going to cross the output range. So if you see the equation, you can predict what is bounded signal and what is unbounded signal just by looking into the equation. Similarly, I'll just write few more equations, and you can see most of the places where the signal is growing with time is unbounded signal. That applies to the exponential signal as well. So if you see this e to the power minus t term, this is a decaying exponential signal, so it will again be bounded. Whereas the growing exponential e to the power t is again an unbounded signal. You can have signal like this, oscillation which is dying. This is oscillation which is growing. Okay, so just by looking into the equation of the output, you can say what is bounded signal and what is unbounded signal. Okay,
So
I
in-
just stop over here.
So I think in a nutshell, I think before I go into problem solving mode, I think this is a very key message what Amol is trying to convey, that if your signal keeps growing with time, then it's unbounded. But if your signal is constant or it's within a limit, then it's unbounded. Because that's the key value proposition which will come when we are going to discuss the stability. So I think Amol, I think let's go to more problem solving and then we'll take the questions, because that will be probably the interest of the audience.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll just cover one more concept, another 3-4 minutes, and then I'll take up problems. Okay. This is directly not the stability problem, but this is another concept I just want to refresh. The characteristic equation. Any system, any control system is defined by its transfer function, and transfer function in S domain is given as GS. Now, the denominator of the transfer function gives you very crucial information about its stability. Okay, the characteristics equation is defined by its denominator itself, which is denominator equal to 0. That is the characteristic equation. Now, characteristic equation tells you something about the impulse response. Now, if you remember, the second condition of stability is that if you don't have any input, the output should go back to 0. Which it may. So what does it mean? It means your impulse response finally should go to 0. Steady state impulse response should be 0. Okay, and steady state output for a impulse input we can easily derive from the transfer function, right? Because the impulse response is equal to 1. That means Ys is equal to Gs, nothing but Gs, right? Now you have this system with a transfer function equal to 1 by s cube plus s square plus 2s plus 8. Okay, so now how do I derive the impulse response of it? I'll use the generic form, right? So if you have Gs is equal to 1 by s cube plus s square plus 2s plus 8, and this is a third order equation, right? So you will have 3 roots, and we can write it by, let's say the roots are a, b and c, so it will be s plus a okay. I can write this equation in this form. This is the transfer function. A, b and c we can find out. We can solve this equation and find out some constant. But what does it say? It says that it is nothing but sum of 3 exponential component. If you want to find out yt, then we can just take the Laplace, inverse Laplace of Gs. Okay, and this components represents a into e to the power minus at plus b to e to the power minus bt plus p into to the power minus ct. Okay. So what it says is that it is nothing but the sum of 3 exponential terms. Okay. Now, if depending on the value of a, whether it's positive or negative, each term will decide whether it is a growing exponential or it's a decaying exponential. So what you need to do is that you just need to find out the roots of your characteristic equation, and if the roots are negative, if okay, so this is if the roots are negative, then the I think I have done some mistake over here. This will be all positive. Okay. So if roots are negative, then this becomes a decaying exponential. If roots are positive, then it becomes a growing exponential. That means even if you don't have any input, the output keeps growing up. So what does it say? It's an unstable system. Okay. So what you have to do is that I need to find out the poles of this system. So poles or roots of this characteristics equation are here. Okay, s is equal to -2, and you have one complex conjugate pole, but the real part is still positive. That means the second term gives you a exponentially growing impulse response. So by definition of the definition of the stability, the second condition, we can say this system is an unstable system. So now we have learned the first method of identifying a system instability or stability, whatever you want to do. One is complementary to other. So the main intention of this exercise or of this discussion is to identify the system stability. So when you have the transfer function of a system, you have to identify whether the system is stable or not. And the simplest method is that find out the characteristic equation, find out its root, and see whether it has a positive real part. Then the system is unstable. Okay. So I'll just summarize again with few examples. You have a first order system, and the transfer function is given by 1 by s plus 2. The characteristic equation is s plus 2 is equal to 0, and roots are s is equal to -2, and impulse response is yt is equal to e to the power 2t minus 2t. That means at t is equal to infinity, the impulse response goes to 0 and the system will be stable. Okay, that's my conclusion. But if you have a negative s1 by s minus 2, that means s is equal to +2, it will again start growing, and even the first order system can be unstable. What happens if you have multiple roots? The multiple roots like this again can give you a stable system, because all the roots are having negative parts and they will finally die down. The impulse response will die down to 0. So it is again a stable system. But if you have multiple roots on the positive roots, then again it will be unstable. And what happens if you have combination of them? It does not matter how many roots with negative value. It doesn't matter. If you have only one roots with positive value, which is s is equal to 2, then the system is unstable, because this itself will will be developing. Okay, so simple concept. You just need to find out one root, at least one root with positive root.
So I think let's take a pause for a minute here, Amol. So I think this is a very crucial concept, because this is something which also used very often in the industry. It's very important to understand the right half pole and the left half pole, because if one of the pole is on the right half, then essentially your system will be unstable. So
Dhitiman, I have that topic. I'll
okay,
cover in 2-3
okay,
minutes.
okay, very good. Okay.
So you just need to don't be confused with lot of informations and all these things. You need to find out whether the system is stable or not. Try to find out whether it has any root on the or any positive root. Okay. And it does not matter what is the order of your characteristic equation. If you have found only one positive root, it does not matter what is the order of the remaining things or what complexity is there. This is unstable. Okay. So now I'll just quickly cover the concept of S-plane. What is S-plane? So just like it's a frequency and it's a complex frequency. So it's a complex variable. In real, if the real part of it is just inverse of your time constant, and it also has the imaginary part, which may represents the oscillatory frequency. Okay. So if you so S is a complex number, and you can just plot it in split it into real and imaginary parts and then place in the pole. But the location of this of your pole on this S-plane gives you again the similar conclusive information about the stability. So if S is equal to 2, this is a system which is stable, we said. And where the root is located, S is equal to -2. So if you plot it over here, it will be in the negative side. Let's say this is 2. If you have a transfer function S is equal to -2, it is on the positive side. It will be here. And we say this is an unstable system because it is growing. So if somebody gives you a plot, S-plane plot or pole location, you can say if anything is on the left hand side, it is a stable system because its time response, impulse response will die down to 0. Anything is on the right side, the impulse response itself will keep growing. This system is unstable. It's as simple as that. But then this is only on the real axis. What happens if it is scattered over the plane? Okay. You have one more system which is second order system. So it has two poles. One is at -3. So this is nothing but S is equal to -3 and -2, because this is S plus 2 into S plus 3. So they have two poles over here. One is already I said over here, and another is this thing. And both of them are on negative side. So the system is stable. What happens if the equation is like this? So it is. Now you have to solve the characteristic equation and find out the root, right? So, but even if I don't want to solve it right now, what we can do is that you have one negative component over here, right? What does it mean? It means that you have a pole, at least one factor of this quadratic term means that equation will be positive. Okay, any negative sign over here says that you have at least S minus 1 or 2 or something, some number. Okay, this is an indication. You can see all coefficients are 1 over here. And for a second order system, if all codes are all coefficients are positive, we can say they have negative roots. But if you have any negative sign over here, then you can say that you will definitely have one pole on positive side. Okay, so one pole will be on positive side, one will be on negative side, and this is again a unstable system. Okay.
I think let's take a question for a minute. I think quite a bit of things have been already covered. So
Okay.
any question from the participant side, you can either raise your hand or you can type on the chat window or you can message through the Q&A section, which you will see towards the bottom. Okay, I see one person has raised his hand. I'm Sandipan. Can you
Yes, yes,
unmute him?
I'm muting him. So I think I don't know the name of the person or the student. I make him unmuted. Now you can talk. Ali1S. His name is showing here.
I think you are on mute. You have to unmute yourself, the participant. Yeah, so can you unmute yourself and then you will be able to talk. Yeah, go ahead.
I think there is another question.
I think let's mute this person because I'm seeing some noise. Probably by mistake he raised his hand.
Another question is coming in chat window. Would you want please?
Yeah. So how do imaginary part play any role in stability? Does it really play any role?
Yeah, I will. We can. I will cover it, but see, imaginary role means you have to see what it contributes, right? If you have an imaginary pole, actually imaginary pole comes with a complex conjugate thing. So they most of the time, almost every time they'll come with a complementary pole, right? So it will be plus minus j and something. So you will have a positive and negative as well, right? Now, if it comes with a multiplying factor with it, right? So let's say you have a complex pole which is sitting on the positive. Both part are positive. So on the first quadrant of this pole, right? So both real and imaginary part are positive, and then you will have the imaginary negative as well, because that will be like I can so basically S is equal to sigma, which is the imaginary part, and then you will have this, right? So this omega is basically the frequency of oscillations. This gives you oscillation, but if you have a sigma with this, that means it is either on first means both of them are sitting on the right side. What will happen is that you will have the impulse response itself will look like this. It will start, the amplitude of oscillations will start developing. Okay, I think the drawing is not in scale, but you can see that it will be exponentially growing. Okay, so I think instability, this is one type of instability, because it will take you to the unbound state. But if you don't have this sigma is equal to 0, then what it says is that you will have a sustained oscillations. Okay, it will not grow. So that means the poles are over here. You have a sustained oscillation. Now this is a so what do you say? It's stable or unstable? It is of course a not a stable system, because you want a linear relation between input and output. This oscillations is irrespective of your input, right? That means the input output relationship of the system is not maintained. The output is almost independent of your input, and that's why this will also be a unstable, considered as a unstable system. Now what happens if the poles are so we started with a complex pole on right hand side. Now we have moved to the imaginary axis. Now what happens if it moves to this place? This will just die down because the sigma is negative. So what will happen is that you'll start with bigger oscillations. I'll just draw it in a separate scale. So it will start and then it will die down. This is a stable system, and this is just like any other second order system. You can, if you give a transient input, impulse or step, it will finally go back to its stable output which is defined by the input, not by the system dynamics.
Okay. So I think in a nutshell, just to summarize, if you have the real component, if it is 0 or if it is positive, then the system will be unstable. But if the real component is negative, then the system will be stable.
Exactly. So you don't need to be confused by looking into a very high order system or complex system. You just need to find out any thing which is positive in the thing. In the characteristic equation, whether you have a positive, you have a root with positive number.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. I think let's move on. Yeah.
Okay. So now I'll just summarize the steps. You can have we can take the generic form of the characteristic equation. So you have a characteristic equation of nth order, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, most of the complex system. But you have to find out whether the system is stable or not. And I will do the algebraic method today. Frequency response method and all these things will be covered later on. First step, instead of finding stability, you try to identify instability. So is there any negative coefficient in the characteristic equation? Do you have any component A0, A1 starting from A0 to AN? Any of these coefficients are negative? If you find any negative component here, you can be sure about at least one pole on the right hand side. Simple message. You just need to see the characteristic equation. Any coefficient with negative part, you can make A0 always positive by multiplying the entire equation with -1. So let's say if A0 is -1 and all of them are 1, you can multiply the equation by 1 and make it positive. Now if you make it positive, leaving A0, is there any other components which is negative? And if you have at least any negative component, you can be sure about the instability of the system. Step 1. Step 2. Is any of the coefficient of the characteristic equation 0? If any of them are 0, like if you start with a, let's say you start with a fourth order system, so n is 4. So you have s to the power 4, but a1 is 0. That means s cube term is missing. That again tells you that you have some component either on the imaginary axis or on the positive side, which means you have instability in the system. Okay. So this, I think this will eliminate one set of unstable system just by looking into the characteristic equation. Third step, if all coefficients are positive, does it mean the system is stable? No guarantee. So here the complicacy comes. If the system is second order, you can say all positive coefficient means roots are positive, but the system of third order or higher order does not guarantee you the same condition. So you have to solve that characteristic equation. And can we solve a fourth order, fifth order equation easily? At least I cannot do. I cannot solve a sixth order equation manually in exam hall. Yeah, if you give me time, I can probably do over a few days, but not easily. So people have come up with the special techniques. These are all algebraic techniques. I will cover the Routh technique to find out the instability of higher order systems. Okay, so again, but Routh criteria or method gives you a few more information on top of the stability. It says whether system is stable or not, but on top of that, it says how many poles on the right hand side of the S-plane. And this is a very common questions on most of your competitive exams, including GATE. Find out how many poles are there on the right hand side of the S-plane.
Okay, so Amol, just a quick, maybe a quick 1 minute. Can you just repeat the third step in the previous slide?
Okay, this one, right?
Yeah.
So what I said is that if all coefficients on the characteristic equation are positive, it does not guarantee you that all roots are negative. That is true only for a second order system. If the system order is more than 3, more than or equal to 3, it does not give you any guarantee. I can give you one example where so for this equation is cube plus s square plus 2s plus 8. The roots are at -2. So one root is there on the left hand side, and you have two complex conjugate poles on the right hand side with a positive real number. But it has all coefficients positive, right? This is a classic example. So we cannot say that if the all coefficients are positive, all poles are on negative side. That condition is not true. So you have to actually find out, solve the higher order characteristic equation to find out the location of the pole on S-plane. Okay, and for that we will use the special techniques. One of the technique is this Routh criteria, and Routh criteria gives you some additional information as well. Okay, so I'll try to build the Routh array. So what it does is that, let's say you have a generic form, nth order system, and coefficients starts from 0. So s to the power n coefficient is a0. You can follow any convention, but finally you have to maintain the consistency. You have to understand and maintain the consistency. So the array is formed like this. You write the first column starting with the highest order of s to the power n, and then you decrease it up to s to the power 0. So you have all order components of the s to the power nth components. So n, n minus 1, and 0. So you will have actually n plus 1 row, n plus 1 row in your array. And first array is starting with the coefficient of a0, and then you just do it with plus 2. So a0, 2, 4, all plus 2. So if n is a even number, then, or maybe it does not matter, you just need to skip 1. a0, a2, a4 contains the forms the row for s to the power n, and s to the power n minus 1 row is formed starting from a1 and again skipping 1, a1, a3, a5, and so on. And these are the two parameters which you directly get from this array. Rest of the things are derived parameter. So you have to find out s to the power n minus 2, n minus 3, s1, s0, and so on. So b1, b2, b3, c1, c2, all these things are derived parameter. And how do you derive? So b1 is derived just like this. So A1, A1 into A2 minus A0 into A3 divided by A1. This is how you derive B1. B2 is again with the same technique. You start from this component and then just cross multiply and take the difference. B2 is nothing but A1 into A4 minus A0 A5 by A1. Okay, and if you have more components over here, you just keep doing it. If you don't have anything, you don't need to go, because the moment you start writing 0 over here, all these coefficients will filled up with 0. It doesn't matter. You just need to continue until you find a 0. Okay. Now you have got one more row filled up. The next one is again the same. Follow the same suit. So C1 is now start with B1 A3 minus A1 B2 is equal to B1 into A3 minus A1 into B2 by B1, and so on. C2 is same, follow the same technique, and you continue till s to the power 0, and you will find out that the last component will have only 1, because the rest of them will be come down to 0. This is a theory, and you just try to understand or make your own convenience to write this. You have to learn to write this array. This is only one thing which will be perfect once you practice more. Okay, now I'll do one exercise on this. Okay, before moving into that, I should not forget the stability conditions. So now system stability is concluded just by looking into the first column. Okay, assuming A0 is equal to A0 is positive, which you can make just by multiplying the entire equation with -1. So even if you have a negative component to start with, you can multiply it with by -1 and then make it positive. So the assumption is A0 is positive. Then if everything on the first column is positive, your system is stable, guaranteed. If anything is negative, let's say B1 is negative, this is a negative component, it means the system is not stable. You have poles on right hand side. That is first and foremost conclusion. Second thing, it says that it has how many poles you have on the positive side. So how do you decide? You see number of change in sign. So we have started with positive. This is positive, this is positive, but this is negative. So you have a change in sign from here to here, and then again this is positive. So you have another change in sign over here, and then you don't have anything. So how many change in sign? 2. It says you have two, at least you have 2 poles on the positive or right hand side of the S-plane. This is another detailed information on the system stability, and it is very easy to do for even a system like 6-7 order. You can do easily. Should not take more than 3-4 minutes. Okay, now I'll take a 4th order system and I will try to find the same information, whether the system is stable or not, and whether it has how many poles it has on the right hand side. So again, this is, I'll start with s to the power 4. Okay, and we'll start with A0, s to the power 4 coefficient 3. Then I'll skip this and this and this. So 3, 5 and 2. And second thing is this and this. So 10, 5, you don't have anything here, so 0. Now we'll derive the remaining part. Okay, so what is this? The first component over here is 50 minus 15 divided by 10, 3.5. Okay, this is 3.5. What about B2? This is 10 into 2 and this component is 0. So this is nothing but 2. 10 into 2 by 10 equal to 2. Basically, if you have 0 over here, then you just the same number comes down. Okay. Now we'll find out the next component here. See your next. This is 3.5 into 5 minus 20 divided by 3.5. What it says is minus, this is 17.5. So minus 2.5 by 3.5. The amplitude, this number does not matter, sign is only what crucial. So this is minus 2.5 by 3.5. What about this? This is 0, 0. Both of them are 0, so this is 0. And S0 again, this is 0. So 2 will come down. Okay? So you have the entire Raoult array. And you have the now you have to make the conclusion.
Amal,
Yeah.
just let's take a pause for a minute because this is very crucial and very, very powerful in Gate. So, guys, any question on this, or you could follow what we just now discussed? Okay, I think looks like everyone followed. Let's move on.
Okay. So and you can see many very, very frequently asked question on this topic, but it's very easy. Once you figure out to write down this array, you can solve any higher order things. Now we'll make the conclusion. I started with A0 is equal to 3. The first component is positive, but not all of them are positive. We have one negative component over here. Okay. So system is unstable. Now, how many change in sign? You have this and this, 2. So number of poles on the right hand side is 2. Okay. This is my conclusion. System is unstable and it has 2 right hand side pole. The next topic is conditional stability. I'll explain the meaning or definition of conditional stability, but let's do a problem on using the Raoult array. I have a characteristic equation where I have a variable which is called k over here. So you have s to the power 4, s cube, s square, s, but then you have a term which is variable k. Now what people can ask, or what you may be interested, is that what is the value of k, what is the range of k for which the system is stable. Okay, this is a little bit different question than asking whether the system is stable or not. Now here you are designing a system, so you have a parameter in the system which decides k. So what you have to do is that you have to find out and make sure the k you design for is within that range, otherwise your system is going to be unstable. Okay, so now I'll again write the array starting from s to the power 4, s cube, square, s to the power 1, s to the power 0, 1. So 1, 5 and k plus 10. 1, 5, k plus 10. Second row is this, only 2, 3, 6, 0. Now we have to write this. Okay, so 15 minus 6 by 3. So this again 3. What about the second term? K plus 10. Because this is 0, 3 into k plus 10 by 3. Okay. Now the second component. This is 18 minus 3 into k plus 10 by 3. Okay, so 3 goes 3, this is 6. So this is nothing but 6 minus k plus 10 is the first term. Second term is 0. This is 0, this is 0, and we are not interested as well. Okay, now S0 term is again, this term is 0, so this is k plus 10. Okay, now you have the array available to you, and this time question is not about stability. Now the question is find out the range of k for which the system is stable. So we need to make sure. So what we have to do? We have to make sure that all of the components are positive. So these are already defined. You don't control them. What you do is that you just control this parameter and this parameter, and you have to make sure both of them are positive by finding a suitable value of k. So if I take this for this, k plus 10 is greater than 0, means k is less than, sorry, k is greater than minus 10. Okay, you got one boundary of k. The second condition is you have to make sure 6 minus k plus 10 greater than 0. What it says is that minus k minus 4 greater than 0, which is k plus 4 less than 0. Okay, that means what it says is that k is less than minus 4. So you have one boundary of k must be greater than minus 10, and you have another boundary of k which is minus 4. So you have to design k within this boundary. So when you are developing a control system and you have a parameter like this, you actually make sure the parameters are tuned or controlled within this thing. And if you can design the k for minus 4 to minus 10, your system is stable. Okay, and this is called conditional stability. Most of the time you will be controlling some of the parameters while designing a control system, and you have to make sure they are within that boundary, and stability is ensured, because without that, unless the stability of the closed loop control system is ensured, your system is not going to work in the real life.
Yeah, so this is one very crucial point what just now Amol discussed, because remember that the entire discussion happened around there is no change of sign. The last two term s to the power 1 and s to the power 0, if there is a change of sign, that means there will be two poles in the right. So just to rephrase the same thing what he just now discussed. So any question on this on this problem what just now being solved? Okay, so one question has been asked meanwhile. So which is better, determining the stability from Nyquist or Bode plot, or determining using Raoult criteria? So what you will comment? Maybe Amol, you comment first.
See, it depends, because both the things, means all of these methods are designed for particular kind of conclusion. Okay, if the question is only to find out whether the system is stable or not, then Raoult method is, I think, most convenient and easy. But again, the thing is how the system transfer function is given. If you have the transfer function readily available, then you can do it, because you have the characteristic equation available with for you, and you can use the Routh array to find out the stability, and even the pole conditional stability, or the at least the relative location of the poles, whether the poles are on right hand side, left hand side, or so on. And sometimes you can even do the relative stability analysis. But when you do the root loci or the Nyquist Bode plot, right, those problems are mainly those techniques are used for an open loop system. So in most of the cases, they say you have an open loop system, and can you say the closed loop stability? Like if you apply it with a certain feedback factor, mostly it is unity feedback factor, or maybe with some attenuation or gain up. So you have to derive the closed loop transfer function from that open loop stuff and then do it. Versus you can directly use Bode plot and make different kind of conclusion. I will not say they are competitor to each of them. If you have 3, 4, like so many techniques in stability analysis, none of them are competitor to each other. It is just used for different kind of information extraction. You have to learn all of them, because the question itself will not come. Question is not limited to the point that whether the system is stable or not. There are a lot of other informations about the system. Like if you have, so far I said the system is won by your characteristic equation. Now if you have a system which has some zeros as well, and you need to conclude about time its stability and its time response, you cannot do everything from this. So it depends on what kind of information, what question is being asked, and what is the information given to you. These techniques are complementary to each other, and once you and it's not very difficult as well. Once you understand the basic concept of stability, why it is important to understand the stability concepts and why it has to be stable, then probably you will grow up over the time and you will find them almost same.
Yeah, I think that's a very, I mean, very well balanced answer, because remember, guys, like, I mean, when you come to industry, it's not like one thing which fits all the bill. And one line answer, which just now Amol told very correctly, if you are only considered to know whether the system is stable or unstable, probably this is a very, very fastest technique. But how far it is from stability, all those things, then the other techniques come very handy. So anything, Amol, you are planning to cover today, or I think?
No, I had the I have covered the planned stuff, and probably we are just on time. Let us see if any questions are there, we can take.
Okay. So any more questions, guys, before we conclude for the day? I think if you have not understood what just now being discussed, you can feel free and ping here.
I think we have a question from Mohammed.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think that will take offline.
Okay.
Why don't I see the questions?
Okay. So I think thanks, guys, and definitely the Bode plot, Nike. Okay, I see one question probably for. Okay. Oh no, it's so the Bode plot, Nyquist, and the root locus we will cover in the subsequent webinar, because these are the 4 techniques. And today, if you ask me, the one of the most critical takeaways, identifying the coefficient. If there is any negative coefficient, then you know for sure that the system will be unstable with respect to the characteristic equation. The second key takeaway is if any of the coefficient is missing, still the system will be unstable. The third takeaway is if any of your pole is on the right half, the system will be unstable. Or better to put, if any of the pole has a component which is real component which is 0 or positive, then your system will be unstable. And finally, this route criteria, because using this criteria, you can very quickly identify just change, looking at the sign change, that whether the system has any pole in the right side or not, because we can find out the counts also very quickly. So on a high level, these are the four critical takeaways. Similarly, Amol will cover Nyquist, root locus, and the Bode in subsequent sessions.